Was what I did wrong? Yes. 4 of the most intoxicating stories from Reddit confessions. When I was 5 years old, I hit a kid's head with a bat. He grew up to be brain damaged and was in our school's special education class. This was almost 30 years ago, but from what I remember, we got into a fight playing baseball in the park in my small town. I don't remember what it was about, but he pushed me and I was holding the baseball bat and I hit his head with it. He fell over and wasn't moving, so I dropped the bat, ran to my bike and biked home. We were alone and no one saw. Also, this was a small neighborhood in a small town. Our parents just told us to be back by sundown during the summer and they didn't really keep tabs on us. Well, our moms were good friends and she told me that my friend was hurt and in the hospital. He had been hurt somehow and a couple of people found him in the park. I remember starting to cry and my mom said he's okay and it'll be alright. I went to visit him and he apparently didn't remember anything from a couple days or something like that. Once they figured out someone hit his head with a bat, the whole community was very upset because he was only 5 years old, and our local police were investigating it. I remember a policeman asked me if I knew anyone who might be upset or angry with him. I told him no. He probably assumed I was upset because my friend was hurt, not because I hurt him. The police kept asking around but they turned up no leads. Eventually the fear and outrage of the small town faded away, but his parents still talk about it to this day. Eventually he got out of the hospital, but I remember playing with him and he seemed different. Eventually the summer ended and we started kindergarten together and were in the same class. He really seemed to struggle learning math and reading from what I remember. As we grew older, it became pretty clear he was different and slower than the other kids. My mom had told me whoever hurt him had hurt his head, so it made thinking hard for him. I felt so sick, I thought I was going to puke. I remember around 2nd grade he finally got moved to the special class. It was a small town and community, so we always saw each other around school. I always said hi, but he never really seemed to get better. Talking to him was more and more painful the older I got because I became more aware of just how slow he was since I hit him. I remember talking to him when I got my learner's permit, when I ran into him and his mom at the store. He said he was going to start driving soon too, and his mom got this look on her face of pure sadness. Eventually I left town and moved away, but still haunted by what I did to my friend after all these years. I've seen him multiple times, when I go see my parents for holidays and other occasions over the years. Every time he greets me with a wave and a huge smile and a hug, and I think that every time it took a piece of me. This last Christmas I saw him when I went to town to see my folks and I could barely make it through talking to him. I'm going to see my folks in a few weeks and I'm going to come clean with what I did those many years ago. I can't live with it anymore, and I deserve whatever his parents or he want to say to me. I'm just so sorry that I did this, and that I'm such a coward and kept it a secret for so long. I know I was a dumb kid, but I never made it right and I have to. I need to come clean in a few weeks when I'm in town again. I help women abandon their families. I live in a country where arranged marriage and abusive marriage is quite common. Little bit by bit things are getting better, but not fast enough. Some marriages are of young girls. Younger than 14. They cannot go to school because they are caring for their husbands, and are pregnant very soon into the marriage. We find these women and girls from school records, police reports, and sometime we hear from neighbors if she is being struck or mistreated. Some of them contact us through friends, or sometimes we visit them and ask how is their life. If she says she wants to go, we will make a plan for her to go to another country, or stay in this country and work in a place where we trust in the city. Some of them take their children. Some take only the little ones. Some don't take their children. I don't tell them they are wrong even if they don't take their children. Most of them were forced to be mothers. We help her change her appearance so she can't be spotted. Most of them I don't meet again, but a few are now my friends. Over 12 years we help over 1,000 women and girls to be free. To tie her to a man she does not know and tell her this is where she belongs now is to make her a laborer. In some parts of my country young and arranged marriages are no longer allowed, but in places that are far from the law it can be easy to do what you want. I'm not sorry for doing this. Some people say God will punish me, but who will punish the husband that strikes his wife? Who will punish the abuser who married her? A wife running away is a great dishonor. I hope these men fester in shame. Somebody replied, I had no idea how prominent arranged marriage was in the US until I met a friend while getting my degree from a local university in the evenings. We became friendly and she shared that she was recently divorced and sounded like she escaped a pretty bad situation, but I didn't press for details. I knew she looked young, but I didn't realize how young until we got to know each other better. I was in my late 20s finishing my bachelor's at night. She was 19 but she was in a forced marriage since she was 14. She was from Pennsylvania, which was quite shocking to me. I figured it would be Kentucky or Arkansas, but apparently in PA, at least 10 plus years ago, girls as young as 12 could be married off with parents' consent. She had 2 children that were 5 and 4 that were living with her ex, and she was in a custody battle, but she was having issues because she was under 21 trying to get custody of her children. Meanwhile, no one said boo when she was married off the summer before high school. I steal hermit crabs from souvenir shops. You know those hermit crabs they sell as pets to tourists in coastal souvenir shops, the ones with shells that have badly painted cartoon characters on them? The ones that come free with the purchase of a little plastic carrier with a thin layer of brightly colored gravel, some flake food, and a shallow water dish with a sea sponge in it. Maybe your parents let you get one while you were on vacation as a child because it's such a simple little pet, and maybe it lived for a few weeks or months or even a couple years in that little plastic box before you noticed a bad smell and found it dead. And maybe you shrugged it off because it's just a little crab and they don't live long, right? Those crabs have a lifespan of 30 plus years. Those crabs are highly social and need to be kept in groups. Those crabs require air that's around 80% humidity or higher in order to breathe, and kept at around 26 Celsius. Those crabs need separate pools of both fresh and salt water, using marine aquarium salt, that are deep enough to fully submerge themselves in so they can regulate their internal salinity. They need large enclosures with deep substrate to burrow down in so they can molt. They need a varied and nutrient-rich diet with fresh fruit and veg. The little crab you got as a souvenir in the same place selling custom airbrush shirts and shark tooth necklaces died a slow and miserable death. It's a miracle it made it that far to begin with, as all the hermit crabs sold in these shops, and major pet retailers, are collected from the wild. They have their natural shells broken off their bodies with a hammer, so they have no choice but to wear some kitschy garbage with Spider-Man painted on it. Roughly 50% don't survive the process and no one seems to care. I care. Several years ago I was in one of these shops and saw hundreds of hermit crabs kept in a bare, unheated open-air cage with only a shallow dish of water. I could smell them before I saw them, dead little bodies rotting in their shells and limbs strewn about. Children were encouraged to pick them up and play with them and beg their parents for one because they're hardly more complicated than a pet rock, right? If I bought some of them I could give them a chance to live, but in doing so I'd be supporting a cruel industry and funding the death of so many more. I'm not sure how long I paced around the shop with my moral dilemma before a sudden realization hit me: I have pockets. As casually as I could, I picked out a couple sickly crabs and gently put them in my pocket. My heart was racing, but no one stopped me when I walked out the door. And so started my life of crime. I don't do it often, but if I'm in a town with one of those souvenir shops I'll pop on in and jailbreak a few hermit crabs. I gravitate towards the weak ones and those missing limbs. They're on their way out, but I want them to have a chance, or to at least die as comfortably as they can. The ones that I've pulled through are all healthy and active now. A colony of contraband crabs. I love the background noise of their shells clacking against their terrarium and each other as they go about their crab business. I'm a little drunk and sentimental tonight, which is my excuse for writing all this. I have a feeling most folks won't care to read it all, but I hope they do, and somehow it'll make a difference. If you made it through my rambling, thanks. May you never be pinched. Somebody replied, "My first job was running a hermit crab kiosk inside a Florida mall. Immediately after the Christmas crazy crab grab, the owner said they were closing up shop. There were still over 30 living crabs in the enclosure. I asked what would happen to them. Oh, they will be disposed of." That didn't sit right with my 15-year mind. I went to the library, pre-internet, and read up on how to free them. I was lucky that these were native to Florida and I lived close to a beach that had a rocky shoreline. Cut to me and my saint of a mother loading up all of these crabs in a box and driving down to the beach to release them. I went back a few times to check on them, and most were still there, near each other, and looked so much healthier than when they were living in the kiosk. Props to you, OP. Keep up the hermit crab revolution. I catfished my ex-wife's new boyfriend. A few months ago I, a 38-year-old man, filed for divorce after I caught my ex-wife, a 32-year-old woman, in an emotional affair with another man. I've tried to stay friends with her for the sake of our kids, but recently she started dating another guy. I'm not gonna lie. It hurt, not only cause it's only been a few months since we divorced, but it feels like she hardly has any remorse for what she did in the first place. This new guy is only 21 and she constantly goes on and on about all the things he does for her whenever he comes around, like why the hell would I wanna know about that? I finally had enough and said screw it, I'll be a petty asshole and ruin her relationship like she did us. Boy, was it easy. I created a fake social media account, found some pictures of a random pretty girl online. I really am sorry to the random internet girl whose pictures I used, and went to work. I added a few random people to make the account look legit and eventually added my ex-wife's new boy toy. I started messaging him off and on just pretending to get to know him and eventually, quite quickly if I'm being honest, he started to get very flirty. I did send him some cleavage shots, again of some random girl that didn't show her face that looked believable to the girl on the fake social media account. Maybe about 2 weeks of my interaction with him, he began to throw around the idea meeting up, and I definitely went for it. I set up a day and time to meet at a hotel and he agreed without hesitation. A day later I drove to the hotel having no intention of comforting my ex-wife's boyfriend, but I wanted to get a photo to prove what he was about to do. Sure enough, the idiot shows up, I take the pictures I wanted and waited for him to leave. It was actually hilarious watching him pace around. Then eventually he started blowing up my fake profile with messages asking where I was and calling me a tease and every name you can imagine. Eventually, he gave up and left. I had saved all of my interactions between the two of us, the texts, the pics, and finally the pictures of her boyfriend attempting to meet up with a random girl, and sent them to my ex-wife as this fake woman. Of course, my ex started blowing up my fake account, cussing me out and saying that I was a liar and that her boyfriend wouldn't do that to her, which I had to admit, had me literally on the floor laughing. I simply blocked her and sat back and waited to see what would unfold. I didn't hear from my ex for almost 2 days, which wasn't like her, cause she at least comes to visit her kids, but I knew that more than likely that she split up with her boyfriend because all I seen on her Facebook page were some cringe pictures about how there are no faithful men. Of course some sayings about how all she needs are her kids, which I found kind of ironic since she didn't even bother to come and see them, nor did she even text me to ask how they're doing, but whatever. She did show up the next day and she looked like you'd expect, which did make me feel bad. For a split second, but the guilt quickly went away. She told me that some girls sent her messages of her boyfriend attempting to meet with this girl. She confronted him about it, and of course he denied all of it, but I guess she showed him all of the messages I had sent to her as this fake girl, and then he couldn't deny it. She broke up with him, and I guess she went even further and told all of his friends and family what he did, and I guess people are really pissed with him. Which I guess he kind of deserves, even though I baited him. You know what? My ex-wife apologized to me. I think this whole thing hit her really hard and made her realize the pain she had caused me, and I think it finally got to her the amount of damage she did to our family, She admitted to me that she had a problem of seeking attention from anyone that would give it to her, even though I gave her all the love and attention she could ever want for the last 10 years. Was what I did wrong? Yes. Was what I did petty? Yes. Do I regret it? A little, only because I used someone else's pictures. I really do feel guilty for that, but I think by doing so, I exposed a potential cheater, and got my ex-wife to admit she has a serious problem and she's actually talking about seeing a counselor to help her with those issues, and also got a little revenge for myself for what my ex did to me. In a weird convoluted way I think I set some things up to go in a better direction from here on. Will I get back with my wife if she gets the counseling she needs? Hell no. Before you ask, yes, the fake social media profile has been long deleted as well as all of the other messages and pictures and so on. I definitely won't ever do anything like that ever again. It made me feel creepy as hell. But I do feel better now.